Hello, welcome to High Tea with Honey, the podcast where we explore the journeys and insights of leaders and innovators who are making a significant impact in their fields. I'm your host, Hony Premlal, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Kelly Simmons OBE. Kelly is a powerhouse in the world of football with over 30 years of experience driving change and growth in the sports. From 2018 to 2023, she serves as the Director of Women's Professional Game at the English Football Association, where she played a key role in transforming Women's Super League into one of the top domestic leagues globally. Kelly's work has not only elevated the professional game, but also secured record-breaking sponsorships and media deals, setting new standards in women's sports. Her commitment to gender equality in football has been unwavering, and her contributions were recognized with an OBE in 2021. Currently, she is a consultant, board member, and columnist for Guardian. So, grab a cup of tea, sit back, and let's dive into a fascinating conversation with Kelly. Kelly, it's a privilege to have you with us today. Welcome to High Tea with Honey. How are you today?
Thank you very much. I'm very well, thank you. Yes, I'm in sunny Brighton, and life is good. Thank you.
Thank you. And I was inspired with your journey. I heard it before, but I'm sure listeners want to know. So how your journey in football began? What inspired you, your passion for the game, and your dedication and advance in the women's football?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I guess it's the building blocks of my career. My family are all big football fans, and I was a huge football fan, and it took me a little while as a very young girl to realise that I wouldn't be allowed to play football. My brother could play football because he was a boy, and I wasn't allowed to play football. And school PE for me was a bit of netball and a bit of hockey, and there was no community sport. And the sports that were on TV in those days were, football, rugby, cricket, and they were the sports that were profile. They were the ones I wanted to try because I watched them with my dad and my brother and my mum, and they were exactly the ones that I wasn't allowed to play. And at a young age, I thought, that's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. I was always set to be a feisty feminist and fighter for more rights for women, I think, from a young age. I just felt an injustice even at that age, and I could see that my brother was making friends and going off to play different teams across different communities and having all these opportunities, and I didn't have any of them. So I think I got into football by chance. I went to university, played captain at Warwick University, got my coaching qualifications. Fell into sport by chance, and when I had the opportunity to work in football, I absolutely grabbed it because I was determined. I think my driver for the last 30 odd years has been to make sure that this generation of girls have better opportunities and fairer opportunities than I had, where I was just completely blocked off from the sport on the basis of my gender. So that's sort of how it started. That's where it comes from, I think.
When you have that passion, when you come across that challenges, so was there anyone there to give you that confidence, you still can do it? So is anyone you remember, family, friends, or teachers?
Yeah, I suppose lots. There was a woman called 𝐒𝐤𝐫𝐚𝐻𝐿𝐿𝐿 who was the first sort of lead for women's football in the FA, a fabulous woman who encouraged me. I wasn't in the FA then, to go and do my coaching qualifications, gave me the confidence to go and get them. And I really enjoyed it and sort of flourished in this environment that I had no idea how I'd get on in, and whether I'd, having gone to the game quite late as a player, whether I could adapt or not to coaching, and loved it. And without those qualifications, I wouldn't have had the chance to go into the FA, because at that point very few women had got coaching qualifications. So she was a key person. My dad encouraged me to go for the interview, took me to London, the town girl, to make sure I got to Lancaster Gate, as it was in those days, where the FA's headquarters was. My parents were always big supporters of my career. Lots of male allies early on, because all the power, everybody when you looked above you in the FA pretty much was male. And some key male allies I've worked with, Howard Wilkinson, who's well known, who was revolutionary really and visionary in his thinking around the whole game, and did so much to set what now is a pathway with high performing England men's and women's teams. He had the vision for St George's Park, the National Football Centre, for academies, for changing the way young children play football. So him and Robin Russell, who was his sort of number two, who was my boss, they were, I suppose, ahead of their time in championing women's football. Before women's football was even responsibility of the FA, it was sat outside of the FA in a little, very underfunded but fabulous, brilliant women driving it forward, Women's FA. So I think male allies have played a really key role. And then, I've been fortunate then to go and work with, some incredible men and women and watch some really, really fantastic leaders in action. But I think, those early days that enabled me to get in, I think they're sort of some of the key people that helped me move from, I was heading back to university to do a master's in social policy, and then suddenly flipped to go in and work in football. And I think they're some of the key people when I look back that I'd have to thank.
That's amazing to hear, even though it was very tough time for you to progress, it's good to have some allies and helping to progress. And also it's nice to hear your dad was there to help as well, because it's nice to have that support from home, isn't it?
Well, he was an Arsenal fan, but sadly I've lost him now. About sort of 4 to 5 years ago. Fabulous guy, big Arsenal fan. My mum's big Liverpool fan. She's from that side part of the world, and so I copied mum and followed Liverpool. So our house was always
their problem.
And bets and debates. Yeah, it was never dull.
You obviously led the transformation of the Women's Super League into a full professional league. So what are the most significant hurdles you encountered, and how do you navigate through into success really? So it must be, as you mentioned, it's a men's world, so you coming in here and making that change. What sort of things have you come across? What was your biggest challenge?
Again, I was fortunate enough to be working with Martin Glenn, who was chief exec at the time of the FA, who's an incredible leader, one of the best leaders that I've ever had the privilege to work with. He'd come in and set a completely new ambition for women's football. And we talk about sort of that shadow of the leader, that, leaders cast this shadow, and I've never seen it to be so sort of evident as when he came in and he said, right, women's football is a big strategic priority. It's the growth area of football. I want every girl to have the chance to play in schools. I want a double participation. I want England to win something. And everybody's like, oof, whoa, hang on, what's this? And this is fantastic. And I'm going to make sure that the board invests to the right levels to make these things happen. And then he asked me to have a look at the WSL. There was a very, very small team working incredibly hard, but effectively only had time to run it, get the fixtures out, sort the regulations out, get the football on the ground. And he asked me to sort of move over. I was director of men's and women's development before, and to take this new role on, this new challenge of director of the women's professional game. It was a brand new role, and it was about elevating the Women's Super League on the senior management team with dedicated sort of senior leadership focus. And I thought, I had a chat with him and I thought about it. And I remember going home and chatting about it at home and thinking, at that point with women's sport, you'd see it in the Olympics, you'd see it in World Cups, those pinnacle moments, it would be visible, and then it would completely disappear until the next World Cup or the next Olympics or whatever that is. And I thought, if one women's sport can break through into the mainstream, it can be women's football. We are a nation of football, crazy football lovers. And we've got big clubs, global brands, and, it's a sport that could do it. And so I jumped at the chance. And when I went in, the clubs were It was an interesting period. The clubs were definitely ready for change. They wanted to see more ambition, which was great. And I think, together we built out an ambition to be the best women's league in the world. And it almost didn't, you could argue, is it us? Is it the NWSL? It's, it's sort of, which is the US league. People will have different opinions on it. It almost doesn't matter. It was about striving for excellence. It was about saying who's the best in the world, whether it's social following, media rights, audiences, attendances, the best players. Where is best practice? Let's try and go after it and get at it, and be the best, and have that mindset that we really want to be the best league in the world. And the reason that we were doing it, and this I think is the most powerful thing, is that we were doing it because we genuinely thought, and we had this higher purpose that the brands and our stakeholders never really bought into, which was we wanted to inspire positive change in women and girls in society. And we genuinely thought if we could make the WSL visible with these incredible role models, fantastic women, fantastic athletes and players, we can make that visible. We can send a strong message to girls and women, boys and men, that women can do anything in society. The final sort of barrier to women is kind of broken down. Football, how dare you get into our football? So we genuinely felt that was, so we were really aligned behind that sort of higher purpose, that big purpose, and we had this big ambition, and we had some support and investment, and we really went for it. And I think, the first big milestone was Barclays becoming a major multi-million investor in it. That was a real statement. They bought into that purpose about inspiring positive change. They were committed to equality and inclusion. They'd got a track record of investing in men's football sponsorship. It made sense. It was the perfect partnership. And I think when they came on board, and then we went out and did the TV deal, which was absolutely sort of a game-changing moment, I think, for the game, where we knew that 3 live games a week were going to be across Sky and BBC. And the BBC audiences, if you get a BBC One slot, you've roughly got at least 1 million watching. If you get a BBC Two slot, you're over 500,000 watching. They are big audiences for sport in this country. So we knew from that moment, I think, things were going to change. And we went from 0 revenue to 18 million of revenue. We were able to start distributing money to the clubs and create, because we happen to be chatting today when it's been announced that the Women's Super League and Championship are a completely independent, standalone, laser-focused company, which was our recommendation for it as part of a governance review, as part of this strategy of how do we become the best league in the world? How do we ultimately make it sustainable long term? And what's the right governance and leadership for it to go and fly into its next stage on its journey to being, a £1 billion plus business? And so we did all of that. We worked incredibly hard with brilliant people. I think the barriers to initially belief, because of the culture. I think cultural barriers, I've had to fight them all the way through. People didn't believe that women's football could be commercially viable, that people wanted to watch it, that people would attend, that people would pay. I've heard it all. I've heard it all in their drones, and my God, weren't they proven wrong? Look at Arsenal last season, 60,000 people regularly coming to watch Arsenal women because it's a great product and it's well marketed in a brilliant stadium with a great match experience. Well, hello, this is what you need to do. You don't stick a product in the marketplace, a new product, without marketing it. So investing in the best product you can be, it's either got to be better or different, hasn't it? Women's football is different. It's a different audience. It's a different environment. It's a different dynamic. It's got all these fabulous things about it that people love, families love, this young, diverse audience love. They feel safe to come. It's a good price point. It's a great day out, but it needs to be invested in. It needs to be marketed, and clubs now have shown the way that it's doable and possible, and it's on its journey to great success. But I think, early days, hard to get investment into it, hard to persuade people to invest in it. And a lot of that was cultural barriers and beliefs about what women's sport could do. And we just had to smash those down and get these proof points in. Barclays a proof point, Sky and BBC a proof point. A growth in audiences, proof point. We became the most socially followed league in women's sport in the world, a proof point on this journey.
That's a very tough journey you went through. So did you have any self-doubt, you would be able to do it? Because we all have sometimes thinking, can I do this? How did you feel personally?
Oh, loads of self-doubt. I went in there, my background was development. I wasn't particularly commercially minded. My natural thing is to think players, pathways, environment, welfare. That is my natural go-to. But I realised very quickly that I was going to have to sort of learn and get people around me who would think more hard-nosed commercially. I mean, I can do it, but my background was more development. I've changed the way children play football in this country. I've been working with sort of Howard and then myself as director of development later on, sort of changing children's football. I'd been involved in putting the pathway in for the Lionesses to come through the Centres of Excellence, England youth teams, etc., with 𝐓𝐫𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐻, who we appointed as the first full-time national coach, who went on to do incredible things in the game. So yeah, I've got a very football background. So I think when I went in there, I was like, God, can I do this? Have I got the right background? Have I got the right skills? Do you know what? It needs to get done, and it's not being done. And I'm going to. And I knew that. I knew a lot of people in the game. I knew a lot of people were relying on me, I suppose, to break down the doors and do it. So I just had to be brave and wing it. Not wing it. I think it's probably not the right word, because I was always prepared, but. Just sometimes you just have to think, I'm just going to have to step in. I feel I might be out of my comfort zone. I don't know how this is going to go, but the cause is so important.
Yeah, if you don't try, you don't know.
I have to be brave. I have to put my best foot forward, and we flew, and it was an incredible journey for 5 years of growth. It was fabulous. But lots of voices in my head saying, "Oh, you should have done that better. You should have done this. You could have done this." I mean, it's the imposter syndrome is I think we've all got it.
Yeah, sometimes you had to take that risk, isn't it? Because people say you fake it until you make it, but no one can with that experience, is it? Because you're on the job. So that is it. So your approach to leadership is both purpose-driven and strategic. Can you talk how you maintain the focus on your mission when you're achieving, because this is a male-dominated area as well. So how you keep that mission on focus when you're? So what was your leadership style?
So I suppose the purpose is hugely powerful, because that was the motivation when things were tough. And you were working 7 days a week, and you're trying to get all the clubs through COVID and all of the challenges of working in an extremely sort of male industry. You'd come home at the end of the day feeling a bit battered or a bit exhausted, and you think, we're on a mission here. This is too important to sort of give up. We've got to keep going. We've got to keep fighting, because this is the last sort of big barrier for girls and women that we've got to smash down. And so that was a big motivator, I think, for all of us, that we genuinely believed that we would inspire this positive change. And then I think having a big ambition was really motivational as well, and focused the mind. But I think we did a lot of work on the strategy, and it was a really clear strategy. It wasn't overly complicated. It was about how are we going to attract and develop the best talent so that the product's great, and how are we going to build our audiences, and how are we going to grow revenue to ultimately make the league sustainable. And with the small amount of people that we had, what were the things that we could do each day that would try and move that forward the most? We couldn't do everything, couldn't do it all at once, but what were we going to do, and how could we best collaborate to get more done? And I think I'm a natural collaborator. I built really strong relationships with all our football stakeholders, and we're still all in touch now, and became good friends, and we're all in the fight together. And so I think I think people would say that my style is quite sort of an inclusive style. You read a lot about compassionate leadership. I absolutely loved and adored the team that I worked with, and we genuinely looked out for each other, and we knew we were in an incredibly special and inspiring project that would face a lot of bumps in the road, and I think it brought us really closely together. I knew I didn't have all the answers by a million miles, so I would try and create environments to make sure that we got the best out of everybody. We were going through a big change period because we knew that the FA wouldn't run it long term, and that's difficult for everybody. But what does that mean? And the way I dealt with that was to communicate. Even I had nothing to say, I'd say I've got no more updates. We've had a meeting, we've not moved anything forward. Just keep communicating regularly and checking in regularly, and all looking out for each other around work-life balance, looking after ourselves. Had a sort of, the team would all be like trying to encourage each other to do a bit of fitness, to look after us in a really hectic, busy, quite stressful environment. So I think, I suppose my leadership style is I like to sort of stick really clearly to the plan that we've agreed that are going to move the dial forward, work collaboratively, and work collaboratively internally and externally to sort of try and maximise sort of support and effort to drive that business forward. But I think when I look back and reflect, I think the purpose and the big ambition were the key sort of motivators, and everything fell off that. And I'm, wanting to be the best in the world, best women's league in the world was our North Star. And I was lucky enough to work with Dawn Airy, who's a sort of highly successful media woman, an incredible leader, and she was chair of the Women's Super League and the Women's Championship, and obviously I worked really closely with her, and I learned so much from her, and she's such a generous leader who, despite an incredibly busy schedule, always had time to help and support and kick ideas around. But she was great because in the board meetings she'd be like, this is our North Star. Is this going to help us to, is this one of the things that's going to help us to be the best league in the world? And then the board were brilliant. We had really good people on the board, and they helped, I think, as well, keep the executive focused on that North Star.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm just coming on to your OBE. Congratulations. Of course, how did you want to share that experience? How do you feel, and how that's changed your, obviously, did it make an impact on how you feel? How did you take that?
Obviously it's a huge honour. Okay, it was a huge honour. I got my MBE quite young, and I was able to take my mum and dad to Buckingham Palace, which was really special. And then I got my OBE after COVID, and there's a massive backlog, and I decided to collect it locally at Brighton Town Hall, and they were absolutely wonderful. And in return for that, if you didn't block up the system at Buckingham Palace, where they've got such a backlog, in return they'd give you 4 tickets for the summer, what do they call them, like the summer party things, at the garden parties. That's it, garden party at Buckingham. So I was able to take my best friends and to the garden party. So both were fabulous celebrations, and I've been lucky enough to win a few awards in the industry. And I know you're kind of supposed to say this, but I genuinely mean it was a team effort. It was genuinely a team effort. I worked with a fabulous team and brilliant clubs, and we could not have gone on that journey without all being together. The clubs investing and driving the game forward, the women's professional game team working with the clubs and the stakeholders to drive it forward. It really, really was a team effort. I suppose I was in the firing line, I suppose the leader, as the director of the women's professional game. And so, you take the flack, and I've got plenty of that on Twitter, and 1 or 2 at games as well. I've got some funny stories at games where people clock you and want to tell you what they think of the refereeing or whatever it is, or a decision you've made. But you also get the accolades, which is lovely. But it genuinely was a massive team effort to change women's football landscape.
Is there any story that comes to your mind? Anything interesting that's something you always remember? So is there any story you want to share with us today? Is there anything with football?
Well, I've got quite a funny one actually, which was that when we asked for the funding initially to try and drive the Women's Super League to be professional, we needed some extra funding from the Women's Super League, and I'd sensed that the FA board weren't going to be fully supportive of my ask. It comes back to a previous era. These people aren't there now, but in a previous era where people just could not see how a Women's Super League was going to be commercially viable. So why spend lots of money on marketing capability or commercial capability? Because who's going to invest? It was that sort of attitude. No, we need to support it, but is this a waste of money? It was that sort of attitude, the barriers we had to break down. But when we went in to ask, our president was in the board meeting, Prince William, and he was a huge advocate and fan of women's football, and we got the funding. So every time I see him now, I think there's that male ally that supported us in the board meeting on women's football and helped. Probably doesn't realise how much he helped put the Women's Super League and Championship on its journey to grow.
That's a beautiful story. I know he's championing for social housing as well. I've seen a lot of pledge to increase our homes, and which is homelessness. That's where I work, and it's nice to hear that. That's a beautiful story as well. So in terms of
he's love to meet him 3 or 4 times, and I've always been really impressed with what a terrific person he is, and I've seen the work he's championed around mental health as well, which is hugely important.
So you're on the forefront of women's football for some time. So for young women or girls, what do you think the opportunities and challenges at the moment here in UK or globally for the girls to progress in football? Is there any challenges?
There's still work to be done all across the globe. If I start here, it's still a bit of a lottery whether you get the chance to play in school. So a lot more schools still offer boys football, and more boys football than girls football. My best friend actually is leading the charge in this area, Donna McIver. She leads on education at the FA. She is doing an incredible job with Barclays to close that gap. Barclays are an investor in that alongside the Super League. They want to make sure girls have got the same opportunities as boys. There's still, the gap is closing because of that work, but there is still a gap. So it's not equal opportunities in schools. There is a massive growth in club girls football, but it's still a little bit of you still wouldn't have as many opportunities as you would boys. So, I'm sure there are girls there that aren't, where the clubs aren't as easily accessible, and so therefore if you haven't got a parent carer taking them or able to drive them to the centre of excellence equivalent if they're talented, there's still some more barriers. And I think if you come into the professional game, and this is sort of not all negative, because I think players really focusing on their education is a really good thing, but I think if you're coming into the women's game, it's eyes wide open that you will not retire with what I call the 3 Bentleys and the multi-millions in the bank. You are not going to be paid anywhere near the same as a male football, which is off another stratosphere. It's like Hollywood kind of salaries. And therefore, we work really hard around what we call dual career. So encouraging, supporting in the academies, players to do degrees and get, relevant qualifications and experience, and supporting athletes as they come into the end of their career, that they're transitioning out. And that could be a career in the game, or it could be a completely different career. And, we've got incredible role models that have gone on to be so successful in media, in coaching and managing, lawyers, et cetera, a whole range of jobs, knowing that you need to have one eye on the pitch and one eye on the future. And I think that makes them fabulous, rounded, well-educated, rounded people. But it's still an uneven playing field, even though we've done so much. So, there's still lots of challenges. We know the game needs to be more diverse at the top. It's been well documented about the Lionesses being a very white team, and that the centres of excellence they came through, because there was very little money, tended to be in the boys' academies, which tend to be in the outskirts of town, where the space is in the sort of leafy suburbs. I remember I was chatting to Emma Hayes about Chelsea's, and it was at Cobham in Surrey, where lots of very rich people live, and driving in their 4x4s, and where we needed the centres to be is in the heart, of London, in the communities, and that has changed. So some tremendous work going on with these emerging talent centres across the country, much more of them in the inner cities, more accessible, more diverse, and that pipeline is changing. But yeah, there's lots of work. Your work is never done, I think, when you're developing your sport, and the gap, in my lifetime, it won't close. But I did say, as I left the FA, no pressure, FA team, that in my lifetime, I think women's football across the globe will be the second biggest sport behind men's football. And I think you only have to look at the 2 billion people that watch the Women's World Cup to say, wow, with very little investment, the women's game has a massive audience, and it just needs to be invested in and marketed well. And it will absolutely thrive, because when it comes down to it, globally, we're all football crazy.
It's pretty massive. I know, it's obviously, I was not a big fan of football in the past, but since women are playing, I'm getting into, I'm getting more and more, becoming fan. So I can understand this will motivate even, there's quite a lot of women not fans in the past, now they want to see it, and because they are coming into that. So what was the one moment you saw in women's learners are doing brilliantly well, so which you saw that this is my dream, this is happening? So can you describe something happened in one of the games?
Yeah, I think it's got to be when England women won the European Championship, the Euros, sold out Wembley. I mean, the whole tournament was fantastic. And it wasn't just the England games that were sold out. I went to a whole range of games, and all the stadiums were full. The atmosphere was it was party-like. It was incredible. It was, warm and friendly and inclusive and fun and brilliant football. And England just got stronger and stronger as they progressed through the tournament. And I had a sense really early on that we would win. And I kept telling everybody internally, England are going to do this. They're going to do this. And I remember one of the senior leaders saying, I've heard it's going to be Sweden. I'm like, no, I honestly think. And so they tease me now that I can sort of, predict the games. But I don't know about that. But I just had this really strong sense. And even when we were 1 down to Spain, and we played that game here in Brighton, and I knew we'd get another opportunity or two. And I just felt every time that we attacked that, we would create great opportunities. The score was such a dynamic, exciting team, and it just built and built. So by the time we got to a sold out Wembley Stadium, I think it's something like 23 million people in this country watched that game either on TV or streaming. Huge. It was one of the biggest audiences of the year for anything, never mind sport. And the world had gone, Lioness crazy, and I was sitting in the Royal Box next to Jerry Spice and Sporty Spice from the Spice Girls. Girl power next to me, girl power massively on the pitch. And I mentioned, I remember we were 2-1 up and we had to play out the last few minutes. And apparently all my friends said to me, all I did was go, blow the whistle, ref, blow the whistle, ref, come on, ref, blow the whistle. And the players, their life is about to change forever. And they just pass the ball as calmly as you like. I would have tried to put it in rose ed, to use a good football term. And I just thought, if they could have impressed me any more, they just went up another notch of how calmly they took it. And I think it was an incredible moment. And then just to sort of re-emphasise what an incredible group of women those Lionesses are, after they'd partied that night, they wrote an open letter to the government demanding equal opportunities for girls in schools, which the government have promised to help deliver in terms of sort of better provision and equal access. So they wanted to make sure that there was a legacy for the next generation of girls. And I think, that speaks absolute volumes for who they are and the people they are. And and wanting to use their platform to keep driving the game forward. So I suppose, when you look back, it was an incredible moment, and that helped us with the WSL. We got an uplift in audiences, we got an uplift in attendances, and more commercial interest. So it definitely, you felt the game move on another notch. A very, very special day indeed with the Spice Girls.
That's a really, really interesting story. Obviously, you've got girl power on the pitch and with you, so I can imagine how you're feeling. So that's let's go into your board experience. And obviously, you're a consultant and board advisor. So how does that what's it like, and what projects you're into? So what excites you in that sort of role? Because it's a different lens, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So having done sort of 32 years in the FA, I've come out and set up my own consultancy business, and I just wanted to continue contributing. Obviously, I've got to feed my rescue dogs, but I mainly wanted to. I felt that I'd still got sort of more passion and I suppose the experience of having taken the WSL to sort of where it was from relatively sort of low levels to the journey we've gone on would be useful for other football federations and other women's sports. How had we sort of built the product? How had we commercialised it? How had we built our audiences? What was the right ownership, governance structures? All of those things. They're all transferable sort of thoughts and issues and challenges for sports. So so I set it up, and being a woman, I was sort of worried that nobody'd ring, and the phone rang within 24 minutes, I think, of me announcing that I was leaving the FA, and got a chance to work with FIFA, the world governing body, supporting their competitions team, who are a fabulous group, working incredibly hard to drive the global development of the game. I've been working with a number of football and sports women's sports clients, really around the professionalisation of the game. So that's been really interesting to see other sports, but also to help other football federations start to think through the sort of journey that we went on at the English FA. And of course, you can always learn so much from everybody as well. So I've been learning loads, which I've loved, and hopefully offering something too. So a mixture of football and women's sport clients globally and domestically, and it's been fun. But I think probably what surprised me about my new life, my scary new life out on my own, is probably the writing for The Guardian. I've absolutely loved it, because I've had to, not that it's been hard, because the FA do brilliant work, but I've always had to sort of, you have to toe a company line, don't you? You sometimes there's something controversial going on, and you have to say X and Y, even if you want to say Z. And of course I don't have those restrictions now, so I'm sort of free to speak. So I sort of roll the laptop up and thump out my latest what people need to do to get women's football moving type articles, and I've got free speech. So that's quite liberating, and I've really enjoyed it. So that's probably my surprise, is how much I've really loved the writing. So who knows? You never know what's around the corner in life. I think that's what makes it so fascinating. And it's only by coming out of the FA and being brave and opening up a bit of space in my life to explore different opportunities and have some space to think, which is so hard when you're in a big job, isn't it? And you're so busy. All these other things sort of open up. So it's been great.
I am going to read your articles, because I'm going to say to the listeners as well, follow Kelly and read your Guardian articles. So now obviously football is your day and night and everything. Is there any hobbies or anything? I know you mentioned about the rescue dogs. What's their names? How many are there?
Hobbies. So I've got I rescued Rufus, my adorable German wide-haired pointer, gorgeous man that he is, from Cyprus. He's normally sitting behind me on the sofa, but I think he's downstairs. So I rescued him from Cyprus about 11 years ago, and then I saw Ginger Rogers, the charity had named her, who's also a German white-haired pointer, but a brown one. And she'd been picked up and needed rescuing from Serbia. And I took one look at her and I thought, oh, you're so cute, I've got to save you. And then after that, I said to my partner, I think I might need to come off social media rescue sites, because can I come home one day and open the door and 10 of them are going to come out? So we've got two dogs, and that's brilliant, I think, because you have to get out of the house. They have to be walked. You have to go down the beach. You have to go down on the downs. You have to get out. It gives you time to think and exercise and space, which sometimes when you're on that treadmill in a leadership role, it's really hard to create. Well, they don't care if you've got a busy day in the WSL or a busy day in your consultancy world. I want to walk, Mum, and I'm going to bark until I have one. So I think they're brilliant. I think for your mental well-being as well as great company. So I'm dog crazy, dog and football.
That's two things.
I'm swimming as well.
Yeah, obviously.
I should have said that.
I know.
I sound like football, like a crazy dog lady in Brighton who loves football. I've started swimming every day since I left the FA. And I swim in this beautiful open air swimming pool in Brighton, and I feel so much better for it, and I should have done it years ago.
Yeah, but swimming is something I love. That's one of my hobbies as well. So is that the secret of you, with that? Because leaders, when you have so much responsibilities, one of the things is the burnout, especially females, leaders these days. What's your advice for, people like, in positions, they have high responsibility, meet those huge targets, and, it's all target driven phase as well. So what would be your advice to keep calm and carry on? How do you make that happen? Obviously, it's still a challenge, isn't it? So any tips you want to share in terms of well-being?
As hard as it is, you've got to try and find a balance, haven't you, between sort of home and work and you and work. And, I mentioned earlier that we sort of try to all look out for each other. We had this thing about the shed, the sleep, hydration, exercise, diet, and we sort of check in on each other. And I think I always was quite good at eating well and sleeping, but it was the exercise I would find would slip if I was really, really busy. And it's probably the one time you really, really needed to do it, because it's, stops you from being hunched up in meetings or leaning over your laptop, and you get out and you get that space and that time to think and that exercise. And I don't have a magic wand for it, and I've dipped in, if I'm honest, I've sort of dipped in and out of it, and I often would think, I've got all my ducks lined up. I've been for a run. I feel like I'm on top of my work, and I've seen my family. And then, a day later, I think, oh God, I'm so behind on this. Or, I'd often feel like, it was never, I never felt like it was always perfect. And I had to try and stop giving myself a hard time that I hadn't got it all perfect all the time, that I was a human, and that probably most people felt like this, that they were either, something had slipped and you try and get it back in, you try and get your exercise back in, or you try and get some time out to go and see my mum or whatever it was, and it was just a constant sort of battle of challenges. But I think, jobs come and go, and you can't stick every single egg in one basket. And I think, life is fabulous and rich and interesting because, we have wonderful friends and wonderful family and wonderful cultural things to do and see, and you want to do great work, and you want to look after yourself, and you've just got to try and plan a balance across that, and don't just work all the time, because people will pull the plug on jobs and you'll be gone, and suddenly what have you got? And I think, I'm lucky that, I've got great friends and great family, and they are, whatever happens in work, that's my sort of foundations, and you go from there. And so I'd really, I used to say to a friend of mine who was a colleague at work that used to work too much, I used to say to him, every time you say yes, you say no. and you just couldn't say no to work requests. So you'd just be here, there, and everywhere, even if you didn't really need to be, because he thought that was really good sort of relationship building. But I think trying to explain to him, but you're saying no to your family. You know, by saying yes to that Saturday, you're saying no to your family on Saturday. You know, and we have to try and get that balance, don't we? We have to try and get that balance. It's not easy. I don't have an easy.
Yeah, I totally agree. Saying no, it's a challenge, but once you master it, I think you don't feel guilty because it's not possible. You can do everything, and it could be work or family. Or is there any final thoughts you would like to share with our audience and listeners?
Well, I think sort of career and sort of leadership wise, I think I always sort of say to sort of young people thinking about their career, and I was lucky enough to get back and speak at Warwick University at their graduation a few weeks ago. And, you know, I owe Warwick so much for setting me on the path, and it was wonderful to be back there. But I remember saying, you know, that I honestly don't feel like I've done a day's work in my life, because I work in something I'm so passionate about. And if you can find something that you're really passionate about with that purpose, then, you know, you get up every morning and it's, you know, it's you sort of bounce into work. And yeah, it never felt like a proper job. So I think, you know, finding that purpose is hugely powerful. So yeah, I've been lucky enough, I think, to working in an incredible industry with fantastic people. And yeah, just very lucky. So find your purpose, find your passion, and you won't have had to do a day's work. The other key thing I think is that it really helped me with my career is having a mentor. And I had a couple of absolutely brilliant mentors. And I think taking that time out to check in and think and be asked really good questions is invaluable. And I'd encourage all leaders and potential leaders to do that. And, you know, and sometimes it doesn't need to be a formal scheme. A lot of people will provide some mentoring for you for free. They'll be flattered to be asked. A lot of people want to help the next generation come through. So don't be afraid to sort of ask for help, guidance and mentoring, because I think, you know, a lot of people would do it. And I think it's an invaluable part of your journey.
Kelly, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on High Tea with Honey, your insight into leadership, the evolution of women's football, and your ongoing dedication to gender equality and are incredibly inspiring. Thank you for sharing your journey and wisdom with us today. For our listeners, if you're interested in following Kelly's work, be sure to read her column in Guardian and keep an eye on her next ventures in women's sports. Until next time, this is Hony Premlal, encouraging you to stay inspired, stay motivated, and lead with purpose. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.